The Baby Bus Generation by
Simi,
Jennifer, Denisha, and Tiffany. They're also known as Generation X. Demographics. Generation X were born between 1966 to 1979. In 1973, this was the peak of Generation X. 3.14 million babies were born. They were the first generation to grow up with technology. Impact on society.
60% of this generation attended college or a post-secondary institution. This generation also holds the highest levels of education in any other age group. The Generation X is often characterized as being very well educated but underemployed. And it is marked by economic uncertainty, which results in low expectations in careers and success rates. This generation is 25% less well off than their parents were at retirement. Comparing the baby bus and baby boom generations. The baby bus generation will not get on the property ladder until 35 years old and will have to pay a 25% deposit down, whereas the baby boom generation would buy a home at 29 years old and only pay a 10% deposit. This being said, the baby bus generation will leave university with $120,000 in debt, whereas the baby boom generation left uni with no debts at all. Continue. The baby bus generation will retire at 68 years old and will be 25% less wealthy than they were during their careers, whereas the baby boom generation will retire at 66 years old and will get approximately $6,000 a year in pension.
Music, television, and movies representations are Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Stevie Wonder, Grease. As well as the Brady Bunch. And in this period of time, the Beatles split.
Important to Canadian history. Generation X, aka the baby bus, was very important to Canadian history because the baby bus was the period of declining birth rates between 1966 and 1979, which was immediately after the post-World War II baby boom. Baby boomers may have been a part of the baby bus, and the baby bus falls between the peaks of the baby boom and echo boom, which were two very large clusters within the Canadian population. The importance to Canadian history also relates back to the impact on society. The impact on society was that larger groups were having fewer children. Generation X started entering the workforce in the late 1980s, and they should have been experienced and received economic advantages. However, there were high unemployment rates and unfavorable income distribution. The baby busters were additions to the workforce, and this resulted in the pronounced change in the proportions of producing the national income and consuming it. The number of pensioners and retirers could rise from 1 to 5 members of the labor force to 1 per 2. When talking about pensions and retirements, Generation X would have been 25% less well off than their parents when they retired at 65. The baby bus generation faces a long list of crippling financial problems, from sky-high house prices to personal pensions. The average young professional will have accumulated $400,000 less in wealth than their parents who were born at the end of the baby boom. Studies compared two men with the same career, personal life, and same lifestyle from 1963 to 1993. They have the same houses with the same prices, they're married, and both have 2 children, but their finances are very different.
Moving on to demographics, Generation X has played a very important role to Canadian history because we've seen a drastic decline in birth rates compared to baby boomers. And this is because Generation X has focused more on their education and establishing a stable career and delaying marriage, and their focus shifted away from family.
Moving on from demographics to music and TV representations, Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Wonder, and Bob Marley were three of the most influential artists at that time.
Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Wonder, and Bob Marley were the most popular artists in the 1970s. Grease was also one of the most
influential TV productions because it gave birth to current day musicals
such as High School Musical and Glee
and Mamma Mia.